"Excuse me, sir. Do you happen to know anyone who could help me? I have nowhere to sleep tonight." That voice was quiet and fragile, almost drowning in the evening bustle of the park. Arthur looked up from the glowing screen of his smartphone, not suspecting that his actions in the next few minutes would change the trajectory of his existence. Standing in front of him was a little girl, no older than 5 years old, in a faded floral dress with pink roses, faded with time, and wearing socks. Her light brown hair was falling apart with tangled locks, giving her the appearance of a child who has no one to comb them. Her tiny feet were shod in worn sandals, and she clutched a tattered handbag to her chest, as if it were the only valuable thing left in her world. Her arms were crossed in front of her, showing a calm and tense posture that should not be possessed by a 5-year-old child. He remained sitting on the wrought iron cast iron bench, looking at her. She was too small to wander alone through the historical squares of the city. She was too small to be covered in the dirt of the city streets. She was too innocent to carry such a heavy, knowing look in her deep eyes. And yet she stood there, on the cobblestone path, in the golden light of the late evening, casting long shadows around her, and looked at Arthur as if he was the last person on earth she could turn to for salvation. Arthur put the phone in the inside pocket of his tailored suit. His eyes were riveted on those large dark pupils that did not beg for pity, did not tremble in fear, and did not shed a tear, but simply asked a question with a quiet desperation that threatened to break his heart. He sat there, looking at the little girl for several agonizing seconds. Not in 5 years of ruthless corporate negotiations and high-stakes business deals, he had been through a lot, but never had he encountered such frightening innocence. Taking a deep breath, Arthur did something he hadn't done in years. He slid off the bench and lowered himself, placing his expensive trousers on the dusty stone path so that he was at eye level with the child. It was a gesture of submission that he had never shown to anyone in his business life, but in the presence of this tintoto stranger it seemed like an appropriate reaction. "What is your name, honey?" he asked, and his voice softened to a gentle register that he barely recognized. "Lee," she answered. Arthur felt a warm, affectionate wrinkle form on his forehead. "Lee, this is a beautiful name. This is Lilia," she repeated seriously, making sure that he understood the importance of her personality. He almost allowed a smile to escape from his wary lips, but managed to restrain it out of respect for her serious appearance. "Lilia, are you hungry now?" She looked down at her dusty sandals, then back up at his face, then back down to the ground again before slowly nodding. As if admitting her basic human need was a huge defeat, Arthur rose from the ground, his eyes scanning the perimeter of the park until he spotted a vendor selling warm croissants and fresh lemonade near the fountain. "Come with me, baby. Let's get something to eat, okay?" he suggested, extending his well-groomed hand to her. Lilia did not hesitate or shrink in fear. She simply unclasped her hands, extended one of her tiny hands, and placed it in his huge palm, trusting him with such spontaneity that it made his heart ache in his chest. 5 minutes later, Arthur was sitting on the same park bench again, ignoring the ringing phone, and watching the little girl sitting next to him. She held a large glass of sweet lemonade and took a bite of a warm, buttery croissant. She ate in silence, all the while holding her tattered handbag with her free hand, refusing to let it go even for a moment. Arthur watched her precise movements with a growing sense of curiosity. "What do you have inside this small bag? What makes her so special? Lilia, do you refuse to let her go?" he remarked in a questioning tone. The little girl stopped chewing. She looked down at the worn corners of the bag, and then raised her large eyes to meet his gaze. With that meticulous care that scratched at the walls of his heart, she unzipped the main compartment and revealed her hidden treasures to the rich stranger. Inside was a tiny blue hardcover Bible with corners worn down to cardboard, a folded white napkin, a faded photograph, and a crumpled piece of paper with a handwritten prayer in large, crooked letters typical of a child just learning to write. My mother told me that as long as I held the Bible close to me, the good Lord is always standing right next to me, she explained, pointing a sticky finger at the worn blue cover. And she said that this is the most important thing in the whole wide world. While she spoke in her sweet childish voice, slightly stumbling over the pronunciation of some long words, Arthur looked at this pathetic, beautiful little handbag and felt a crushing wave of shame washing over his being. It was a burning shame for everything he owned. Shame for the huge penthouse in which he lived. Shame for the luxury cars he drove. And shame for everyone times when he complained about his privileged life. Here is a 5-year-old child getting ready to sleep on the pitiless concrete streets, clutching a worn Bible in a tattered purse. And she spoke about God with the conviction of a person who owns all the riches of the universe. "Do you believe in God, mister?" she asked, and her innocent question pierced his corporate armor. Arthur was speechless. He sat in stunned silence, looking at the deep abyss in her young eyes, unable to formulate a lie, but also not wanting to admit his own spiritual bankruptcy. After a long, heavy pause, he adopted a subdued tone and decided to move the conversation into a safer direction. "What about your mother, Lilia? Where is she now?" he asked, fearing a possible answer. Lilia raised her small hand and vaguely pointed to the sky, a gesture common for small children when they lack the vocabulary to explain a complex situation. "She is in a large hospital," she stated. She fell hard and hit her head hard. Then she fell silent, and then I was left completely alone. Just like that. These simple sentences, spoken with ear-splitting naturalness to a child who does not yet understand the magnitude of the tragedy unfolding around him, paralyzed Arthur. He continued to look at her. His mind raced through 100 different scenarios. Little did he know that there was much more to this devastating story that he did not yet know. However, in the next few minutes, he would begin to understand why this precious little girl was wandering around a dangerous city without supervision. A woman who looked to be in her mid-30s was racing along a paved park path. She was heavy, was breathing. Her chest was heaving, and her eyes were bloodshot and swollen. In her gaze, one could read the madness of a person who had been looking for someone for a long time. "Oh, my dear Lord," exclaimed the out-of-breath woman, when her crazy eyes focused on a small figure sitting on a park bench. "I finally found you, my precious girl." This worried woman was Svetlana, a hard-working neighbor from the rundown hostel where Lilia and her mother were renting a cramped room. Svetlana spotted a faded floral dress from across the square and ran towards them, ignoring the curious glances of the surrounding tourists. Arthur stood up. His protective instincts flared as he positioned himself in front of the child. "Do you know this little girl, Mayim?" he asked, and his voice returned to its authoritative tone. "Of course I know, mister. I'm her mother's neighbor," Svetlana answered. Her voice was choked with unshed tears and extreme exhaustion. Svetlana paused to catch her breath, holding a hand to her chest as she explained the heartbreaking reality of the situation. Maria had a terrible fall at her cleaning job 3 days ago. She hit her head hard on the marble floor. She was taken away in an ambulance. That heartless woman who runs our hostel threw that poor child out onto the street without the slightest hesitation, because there was no one to pay the weekly rent. I walked these streets, looking for this sweet angel for 2 whole days. She slept here, in the cold, for 2 nights. Lord have mercy. Arthur turned his head to look down at Lilia. The little girl was unfazed by this dramatic revelation. She looked lovingly at her little blue Bible, admiring it as if it were a shiny new toy, just like any innocent child would. For 2 days, a defenseless 5-year-old girl slept on the unforgiving streets of the city alone, clutching the tattered book in her hands as if it were a shield from darkness. Arthur looked at the little girl for a long, quiet moment, feeling how deep in his soul there was a tectonic shift. Then he again turned his determined gaze to the upset neighbor. "Ma'am, you can leave her in my care," he stated with unshakable authority. "I'm going to take her to the hospital right now, so that she can see her mother. Svetlana looked at the tall man in an expensive suit made by her. Then she looked down at little Lilia, and then looked at the man again, assessing his character with the suspicion characteristic of hard-working people when they deal with rich strangers whom they cannot verify. Surprisingly, it was the little girl who answered the unspoken question hanging in the humid air. "He is the one whom God sent for us, Aunt Sveta," Lilia declared. She spoke with such deep confidence and lack of fear that Svetlana felt her defenses crumbling. The stately woman took a deep breath, bent down to the level of the child, gently kissed Lilia on her dirty forehead, and whispered, "Okay, my dear girl." Then Svetlana stood up, fixed her tear-filled eyes on Arthur's face, and issued a stern warning. "Make sure you take good care of her, mister." In response, Arthur nodded solemnly. "I give you my word, you can trust me," he promised. And with that confidence, Svetlana turned and walked away along the tree-lined alley, muttering quiet prayers of gratitude under her breath until she disappeared into the evening crowd. But that's not all. Among all this newfound determination, there was one huge detail that Arthur did not know about. It was profound, a buried secret concerning Maria, his mother lying unconscious in a hospital bed, a secret that was about to explode into the reality he thought he understood, and he was destined to discover it before the sun set over the city. As Arthur reached into the inside pocket of his jacket for his phone, intending to call his personal driver to take them to the medical center, he realized that he needed basic information to navigate the hospital bureaucracy. Heplin to resolve this tragic situation with the same cold efficiency that he applied to corporate mergers. But before he dialed the number, he asked the most important question of his life. "Lilia, what is your mother's full name?" "Maria Andreevna Volkova," answered the little girl. Her voice was clear and ringing, like a small silver bell. The expensive smartphone almost slipped out of Arthur's numb fingers, almost hitting the hard paving stones below. He stood rooted to the spot. His hands froze in the humid air, and his lungs forgot how to take a breath. Maria Andreevna Volkova. This is a specific name. This one, the exact sequence of words, was a phantom he had avoided hearing for 5 grueling years. It was a name he had shoved into the darkest corner of his mind, a memory he withheld light from because admitting it caused a pain too unbearable for his ambitious heart. "My mother has a little dark spot here," to emphasize her point. Lily raised her small hand and pointed to the left side of Arthur's jawline. Then she touched her own tiny chin in the same place, as if pointing to a birthmark on the face of a rich stranger was the most natural phenomenon in the world. "How did you know about this, mister?" she asked with innocent curiosity. Arthur mechanically put the phone back in his pocket, trying to hide the strong trembling that engulfed his hands. 5 years ago, Arthur was not a millionaire commanding a corporate empire. He was a broke 28-year-old man with no money, no regular job, surviving in a dirty rented room on the outskirts of the city. And Maria Andreevna Volkova was a quiet, hard-working girl living in a tiny room next door to him. She was simple, kind, and had a radiant smile that lit up the dim corridor of this miserable hostel. They started as neighbors, became close friends, and it grew into something much deeper. For several wonderful months, they were the center of the universe for each other. But then a golden opportunity appeared. A lucrative corporate offer in a large company located in a completely different city. Arthur packed his meager belongings and left without looking back, promising her with fierce passion that he would return, that everything would be perfect, and that he would return to take her to a better life. But he never came back. He never came back for her. Life sped up, huge sums of money began to flow in, and Maria was left behind, locked in a mental box that he actively refused to open ever again. And now, contrary to all the laws of the universe, Maria's daughter sat next to him in the park bench in the very center of the city. But this tiny child slept alone in the dangerous streets for 3 painful nights, clutching a simple book as her greatest treasure, unaware of the true identity of the man who bought her a croissant. Arthur felt the desperate urge to burst into tears. But before the sound could escape from his clenched throat, the sharp vibration of his phone ruined the moment. It was his business partner, Ruslan. A voice echoing coming from the earpiece was intense and laced with undisguised panic. "Arthur, we need to talk right now. It's about Irina. She went to the city court first thing today. Irina has been Arthur's glamorous high society girl for 2 years. She was undeniably beautiful, impeccably dressed, and was a regular guest at the most exclusive aristocratic parties in the city. She had a deep contempt for anyone who wasn't that wealth like her, and never tried to hide her cruel prejudices. What exactly did she do in court?" Arthur demanded an answer, although his chest was already constricting with a terrible feeling. "She has officially filed a legal petition stating that you are mentally incapable of managing your own assets," Ruslan blurted out. "She is trying to arrange a hostile takeover of your company, Arthur. She has found a ruthless lawyer." Ruslan's warning was not breaking news. It was the final confirmation of the nightmare he was already living. Earlier that morning, before he crossed the threshold of his glass-walled office, a thick, unmarked envelope was personally delivered to his private residence. It was an anonymous package filled with incriminating drafts of legal documents, printed screenshots of encrypted messages, and lists of compromised contacts. The contents were destructive. Irina, the woman he foolishly believed in, had some kind of genuine sympathy for him, had been planning his financial ruin for many months. She hired an aggressive lawyer, bribed a false medical witness to testify against him, and was preparing to legally register claims that Arthur suffered from severe psychological breakdowns, panic disorders, and was incompetent to remain as the CEO of his own empire. Her malicious plan was simple and was shockingly warm. She intended to wait until the moment of extreme exhaustion, ambush him with a mountain of complex papers, and trick him into giving up his rights before he could realize the trap. She wanted everything: subsidiaries, shares in the huge fortune he had amassed through 5 years of tireless work. And the saddest part of her grand plan was her arrogant belief that Arthur was still in the dark, wandering blindly in the dark, ready to step with the rock she had built. That morning, Arthur fled his corporate building, gasping as if the walls were crushing him. He ordered his driver to stop near a park, needing the open sky and the quiet rustle of the oak trees to formulate a counterattack. Sat on that bench, bending under the suffocating weight of a huge betrayal, when a tiny, fragile voice appeared out of nowhere and changed the fabric of his reality. "You're okay, mister?" Lilia asked, her big eyes searching his pale, upset face. Arthur desperately wanted to offer a soothing lie to say yes, but he found himself unable to deceive a 5-year-old child who slept on the sidewalk, but still had the grace to worry about the well-being of a stranger. "Not really, Lilia," he admitted, his voice barely louder than a whisper. "There is one bad man who is trying to steal everything I worked for." Soft Lily's features formed a mask of deep concentration. She pondered this difficult information for a short moment, and then, with the serene calm that she possessed, she offered a solution. "Do you want me to pray for you right now?" Arthur sat motionless, looking at her in deep bewilderment. Here was a child without a safe bed, without any guarantee of her next meal, whose mother was struggling to live kilometers away with nothing material. And her immediate instinct was to offer spiritual cover for a billionaire. He could not bring himself to say no, and no one could have predicted the chain reaction that would follow this sincere prayer. Irina, sitting confidently in her luxurious penthouse on the other side of the city, had no idea that at that very moment the huge house of cards she had built was doomed to collapse. Lilia closed her eyes, folded her tiny hands together, and bowed her head. In the sweetest, most innocent voice Arthur had ever heard, the little girl began to speak to the heavens. "Dear Lord, you already know everything that is happening, and you see that this good man is going through bad things today. Please take good care of him. And please take care of my mother who is sleeping in the big hospital. And thank you very much for the delicious croissant. Amen. It was wonderful. Arthur kept his eyes closed for a few long moments after her quiet voice disappeared into the surrounding noise of the park. In those broken sentences rested a heavy force that was able to penetrate the fortified fortress deep in his chest, a place that his great wealth could never access or heal. Finally, he opened his eyes, straightened up, and made an irrevocable decision. Lilia, I am going to take you to the hospital right now so that you can be with your mother. And after that, you will stay right next to me until she gets better. Do you understand? Lilia looked up at him for a long time, analyzing his soul, before finally speaking. You are exactly the person God promised to send us. Arthur had no idea how to answer such a deep question. So he simply reached down, grabbed her tiny hand with his own, and walked purposefully to the place where a black luxury sedan was waiting for him. Upon their arrival at the sprawling city hospital, the woman at the reception desk greeted them with a bewildered look. It was an astonishing sight, a tall man in a tailored Italian suit holding the hand of a tiny, ragged child in a faded, unwashed dress. But Arthur paid no attention to the disapproving glances coming from the waiting room. He marched straight to the counter and furiously demanded to see Maria Andreevna Volkova. Maria's intensive care unit walked out of the room to meet them. Her face was covered with deep exhaustion, but her demeanor remained professional and kind. Are you a member of the immediate family, sir? The doctor inquired. I am a very old, very close friend, Arthur answered. His posture was tense. How exactly is her condition? The doctor sighed heavily. She suffered a moderate traumatic brain injury from the blow. Her vital signs are stable, but she remains unconscious. Her ability to fully recover will depend on the quality of ongoing care she receives over the next few difficult weeks. She will require an enormous amount of rest and ongoing specialized monitoring. The doctor hesitated, looking down, and medical expenses are piling up. She doesn't appear to have any health insurance on record. Without breaking eye contact, Arthur unbuttoned his tailored jacket, took a matte black credit card from his leather wallet, and pressed it directly into the palm of the stunned doctor. You will transfer every single bill, every procedure, and every medicine to this specific card. There is no spending limit. You do whatever is medically necessary to save her, regardless of the cost. The doctor looked at her in amazement, that exclusive piece of metal. Then she looked at the deadly serious expression on Arthur's face and finally lowered her gaze to little Lily. The child held Arthur's hand tightly. Her small purse was securely hidden under the other hand. Can I please go and see my mother now? Lilia asked in a quiet whisper. They pushed the heavy wooden door and stepped into the dim room. Maria lay motionless in the center of the bed. Her skin was pale against the background of the white sheets. A thick white bandage was securely wrapped around her head. Lilia approached the metal railings of the bed with slow, hesitant steps. She reached out her hand through the bars and placed her tiny hand on her mother's limp fingers and stood completely motionless. Then, in a voice in which there was no fear and which did not tremble, she spoke in a quiet room. Mom, I'm right here with you. I'm safe. God sent a man to help us, exactly as you promised he would. Now you can sleep peacefully. Arthur felt a sudden constricting sensation in his chest and was forced to take a step back from the room. He stood alone in the cold corridor, leaning heavily on the spotless white wall. His eyes burned as an unfamiliar wave of tears threatened to spill. And it was there, in this lonely hallway, his cell phone began to vibrate again. This time, the caller ID flashed the name of his elite corporate lawyer. The man's voice crackled through the speaker, vibrating with aggressive urgency and triumph. Arthur, we finally got her into a trap. Irina has made a catastrophic mistake. She used a fraudulent medical witness to sign papers on her competency, and my private investigators just received irrefutable evidence of the transaction. If you give me the green light, We can legally ruin her life right now." Arthur turned his head, looking through the narrow glass window in the hospital door. Inside, little Lilia was holding her unconscious mother's hand. Her head was bowed in silent prayer. It was a 5-year-old girl who helplessly prayed for a distressed stranger in a public park. And miraculously, her own salvation arrived long before his own battles were resolved. But the worst part of this chaotic day was still approaching. Simply because the wily Irina did not know that she had already lost the war. And once she realized that her grand plan had evaporated, she was sure to unleash a storm that could endanger everything. Less than an hour later, Irina confidently strode through the main entrance of the hospital, showing a poisonous smile that, as she did not yet understand, would be her last. She materialized at the end of the second-floor corridor at exactly 1800 hours. She looked tall, elegant, and smelled of expensive perfume. Her aggressive lawyer walked next to her, clutching a thick leather briefcase with the last documents that Arthur had to sign that firmly believed that the trap had been sprung. She used her vast network to track Arthur's luxury car to the medical center, deciding to ambush him. Her strategy was straightforward and brutal. Arrive unexpectedly, apply enormous psychological pressure, and mercilessly intimidate him into submission. She believed that Arthur was in a vulnerable state and would blindly sign the transfer papers, not realizing that he was willingly surrendering his corporate empire, his huge bank accounts, and her vast real estate portfolio. She obsessively calculated every variable of this betrayal. You see, she was sure that he would not reveal the truth in time, that falsified psychological assessments were legally binding, and that she remained 10 steps ahead of him. The only important element that she failed to calculate was that Arthur already had complete knowledge of every detail, every lie, and every forged signature. And he sat patiently in corridor, quietly awaiting her arrival. Irina abruptly stopped her confident march when she noticed Arthur calmly sitting on a plastic waiting chair. Lying peacefully on his lap, sound asleep, was little Lilia. Irina's ideal aristocratic face briefly distorted in a mask of genuine disgust at the sight of an unwashed child. She pulled herself together and looked fiercely at Arthur. "What, for God's sake, is this means?" she demanded. Her voice was deliberately low, but sharp as a razor. "Why are you sitting in a state hospital, holding a dirty street child in your arms?" "Lower your tone," Arthur commanded in a low, dangerous rumble, refusing to lift his protective gaze from Lily's sleeping face. "Arthur, I need to speak with you immediately in private. We have an urgent legal situation that requires your signature right now. If you refuse to sign these papers tonight, you will lose complete control of the executive council by tomorrow morning." Arthur looked up for the first time since she entered the corridor, fixing his cold, calculating eyes on hers. He looked at her with exactly the same dead and emotionless gaze that he reserved for ruthless competitors trying to bluff in million-dollar negotiations. It was a calm, bottomless, and terrifying gaze. "Irina, I know exactly what you did," he stated with frightening accuracy. "I know everything about the fake medical witness. I know exactly how much money you stole from my private accounts to secretly hire the man next to you. I have every single piece of correspondence documented and secured." Irina completely froze. Her carefully constructed facade of superiority did not shatter. Instead, it slowly, pathetically melted away, resembling cheap paint washed down the drain in the pouring rain. "You pull out, wild accusations," she muttered. But the arrogant venom was gone from her trembling voice. "My personal friend for 15 whole years." Irina's lawyer nervously reached out, placing a trembling hand on her shoulder, and whispered in her ear. She shook off his hand, her face contorted with rage and humiliation. She glared down at Lilia, who had been awakened by the tense whisper and who was now watching the unfolding dramatic scene with wide, wary eyes. "You are throwing away our entire empire because of some pathetic street rat," Irina spat. her voice dripping with pure anger. And it was at that moment that Lilia, a 5-year-old child, still rubbing sleep from her eyes, sat up straight and declared in a small, unwavering voice that echoed off the sterile walls, "I'm not from the street, lady. I belong to the Lord." A heavy, stunning silence fell over the entire corridor. A passing nurse stopped dead in her tracks. Irina's aggressive lawyer bowed her head in deep embarrassment as Maria's hospital room swung wide open. The attending physician ran out, her exhausted face completely transformed from shock and relief. She woke up. The doctor announced, "Mom just woke up." Lilia let out a joyful cry that resounded beautifully along the entire length of the corridor. She jumped off Arthur's lap, rushing as fast as her little legs could carry her, straight into the hospital room. Arthur remained completely motionless for a short second. Then he again turned his cold gaze to Irina, who was taking victorious steps back next to her panicked lawyer. "You can leave now," Arthur stated with absolute finality, "and never come back." Irina turned and practically ran down the corridor, without uttering a single word of protest. Cheeks, while laughing with pure, unfiltered joy. Maria turned her head. Her exhausted eyes fluttered open. She saw first her precious daughter, and then her gaze shifted upward, stopping directly at the tall, handsome man standing in the door. She stared at him. She continued to stare, her breath caught painfully in her throat, until her dark eyes filled with fresh tears. "Arthur," whispered she, her voice was hoarse and broken from days of silent unconsciousness. Lilia remained standing on the right side of the hospital bed, refusing to let go of her mother's hand. Arthur approached and stood awkwardly on the left side of the mattress, feeling unsure of what to do with his own large, empty hands. "How did you manage to find me?" Maria asked. Her throat was still hoarse and weak. "It wasn't he who found me, Mom," Lilia readily intervened, her face glowing with innocent, all-consuming love. "She found me," Arthur corrected gently, his eyes glued to Maria's fragile face. "Mom, you were right. God really sent someone to help us," Lilia announced. Maria closed her eyes for a long, hard second. When she opened them again, they were filled with sorrowful tears. "There is something important that I need to tell you right now. I should have found a way to tell you this years ago. I should have tried harder to find you. You don't need to explain anything now. Just rest," he pleaded, wanting to relieve her of exhaustion. "Yes, I need to do this," she insisted, taking a long, shuddering breath that seemed to come from the very depths of her soul. "Arthur, Lily is your biological daughter." The silence that instantly engulfed the hospital room was so absolute, so heavy that the faint rhythmic beeping of the medical monitors sounded like thunder. Arthur stood paralyzed. His mind struggled to comprehend the incredible magnitude of her words. He looked down at Maria's tear-stained face, and then deliberately turned his head to look at little Lilia. He peered deeply into those large, dark eyes. Those beautiful, spiritual eyes that he mistakenly thought belonged to her mother. But standing there, under the harsh fluorescent lighting, looking at her for the first time, he saw the undeniable truth. He saw his own distinct line of eyebrows. He saw the exact shape of his own nose. He saw the perfect reflection of his own forgotten humanity staring back at him. How could he be so blind? You see, he didn't recognize her because he looked at the world through the detached eyes of a man who saw only strangers and statistics. But this precious little girl was never a stranger. "I found out I was expecting a child just a few weeks after you packed up and left," Maria continued, her voice constantly breaking under the enormous weight of the confession. "I tried to call your phone, but the automated voice said that the number had already been changed. I had no idea what company you were with, moved, or what city he lived in. Months turned into years. I just kept working, trying my best to raise her myself. I worked day and night, trying to give her everything I could." Arthur found himself unable to formulate a single coherent word. A huge, suffocating lump formed in his throat. a lump made up of 5 painful years of absence. For 5 years, his own flesh and blood grew, learned and fought without him protection. For 5 years, a devoted woman worked to the bone in the shadows, never complaining, never asking the universe for handouts. She was an outstanding woman who, despite living in deep poverty, successfully taught her daughter to hold on to her faith with an unbreakable grip. She taught little Lilia to carefully store a cheap, worn Bible in a tattered handbag and treat it as if it were the most valuable treasure on earth, because in the end it was the greatest treasure that ever existed, for it sustained her spirit when the world abandoned her. Lilia stood quietly with her dark eyes darting between the 2 crying adults, watching their emotional breakdown with solemn respect. Then, breaking the heavy silence, she asked in her small, piercingly direct voice, "Mister, does this mean that you are my dad?" Arthur's knees finally gave way. He knelt directly on the cold linoleum floor of the hospital room to be at eye level with his little girl. His eyes were red, tears flowed freely down his cheeks, but he refused to take his eyes off her. "Yes, my sweet Lilia, I am your daddy. I have made so many terrible, selfish mistakes in my life. But if you let me, if you give me a chance, I desperately want to stay right here with you forever." Lily's face formed a mask of serious contemplation. She crossed her tiny arms over her chest, displaying that same stubborn, determined posture that he now recognized as a mirror image of his own. She considered his request and then gave her verdict. "Okay, you can stay, but you will definitely have to learn how to do it right. Pray." A sudden, irresistible burst of laughter burst from Arthur's chest. It was a deep, wet and sincere laugh that burst out from the place that he thought had died many years ago. It was that specific, beautiful sound that the human heart makes when what was cruelly broken into pieces finally begins to grow back together. Hearing his laughter, Maria began to laugh too. Her joyful sounds mixed with the continuous stream of tears flowing down her pale face. Seeing her smiling parents, Lilia stretched out her hands, took Arthur's large trembling hand in her left and her mother's fragile fingers in her right, squeezed them tightly, and closed her eyes. "Dear Lord, thank you very much. You really sent my dad back to us. You fixed my mother's head so that she could wake up. You really know everything. Amen." 2 weeks later, Arthur came out off glass sliding doors of the medical center. He carried a deeply happy Lily, holding her securely close to him, and Maria walked slowly right next to him, leaning heavily on his shoulder for support, still physically weak, but finally standing on her own 2 legs, ready to begin their new life together as a family. Welcoming a bright, clear day, Arthur felt the warm sun on his face and realized that the empire he had spent 5 years creating merciless years was completely insignificant compared to the weight of the little girl resting in his arms. All his adult life, he aggressively climbed the lonely, treacherous mountain of ambition. Convinced that wealth and capital were the only shields from the harsh world, he believed that relying on others or believing in miracles was just a crutch for the weak. However, all his money and corporate strategies could not protect him from betrayal within his own home. Instead of logic saving him, the universe sent a tiny, unwashed child in a faded floral dress and torn shoes. It sent a little girl who was rejected by society, but held a tattered blue book with more reverence than a king holds his crown. Through her innocent, unshakable faith, a broken man was restored. Arthur realized that the love he had heartlessly abandoned in his despair sprinting towards success did not wither. She waited patiently for him to open his eyes. We often carry the crushing weight of our past failures, believing that an impossible reckoning awaits us for selfish choices. But Arthur found that instead of punishment, he was met with the breathtaking mercy of a second chance. He learned the hardest and most beautiful lesson of his life. The miracles we desperately need rarely reside in the majestic packages. They come disguised as quiet, simple moments that we almost ignore, proving that no matter how far we have wandered, redemption is always waiting for us to just look down and meet the eyes of grace. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who may need to hear these words today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to join us for more emotional journeys. Until next time, times.